people are sick to the back teeth of it. So there we go. Strong feelings there. Gawain, do you want to any quick comments on what the experts are saying?
The government are trying to close down hotels. This is true. But what do they do next? Will they put them into HMOs or multiple occupancy in smaller and smaller places, making more and more trouble at a local level? So instead of improving the situation, when they close down the hotels, actually they're making it worse and they're dissipating it across the country, and it becomes harder and harder to control. So the bottom line is you've got to stop the boats. You've got to stop them coming. If you have a bath and it's overflowing, you turn off the tap before you even try and deal with the plug. You just turn off the tap, let it cool down, and then you could possibly reach for the plug and do something about it. If you try and plunge your hand in while the tap's still running, you're going to scald yourself. And
sorry, I forgot to introduce you, Gawain Towler, former Director of Communications for Reform UK, who's still joining me in the studio. He's running for the party board. He's one of 19 on the list. I completely endorse him if Reform wants sensible people on their party board, although that might not help him with me being a Conservative Party member. But I think that they would, if you want someone who's been loyal to the cause, someone who's been consistent for the cause over decades, not just the recent success over the last 18 months, Gawain is your man. Now, Gawain, we know that yesterday, Mohammed Fahir Amaaz, he was convicted for assaulting the 2 female police officers in Manchester Airport. And just to say, for the sake of listeners, the jury were unable to reach a verdict on whether he and his brother also assaulted the male officer, Pc Marsden, but both men will now face a retrial on that charge. But my concern, listeners' concerns, will be that 2 of the police officers who were referred to by the Independent Office for Police Complaints are still under investigation for what they did. How on earth can we be investigating police officers when people have been convicted for assaulting them?
You can't. Just because they've been convicted for assaulting the police officers, or he has been convicted of assaulting the police officers, does not mean that the police officers themselves didn't do something. And I think the film did suggest that they did possibly overreact at that point. But when we first saw the film, and it was outrageous of the police officers' response, we had no idea of what had happened beforehand. And so therefore the country's mood was very aggressive towards those police officers, and that was an act by the Greater Manchester Police. They released that video. They allowed their police officers to be pilloried. So the whole mood changed. When we then started to see the other film of the accused and the person who's been found guilty, thumping, breaking noses and stuff of this sort, then the mood changed. But what I think is absolutely disgraceful, and there's so many things in this world, in the world of bureaucracy, is that this case has been going on for more than a year. The punishment, even if they're found not guilty by the police investigation, the police internal inquiry, they've spent a year sitting there, I guess on suspension, not being able to get on with their lives, not being able to get on with their jobs. The punishment is the process. Don't you dare even consider doing something, even if we find you not guilty, don't you dare consider, we are going to ruin your life. And we need justice not just to be done, but to done with a reasonable time frame. And this is not. Because, as I say, these days, the greatest punishment of all is the process.
And we saw Nigel Farage recently launch the Lawless Britain campaign, which Reform are doing over the summer recess period. And he was obviously saying he wanted big, strapping police officers. Sarah Pochin was saying that we need police to be tough. Do you think that there's too many politicians for too long have been willing to undermine the police because they've not been willing to push back on some of the online sentiment from the left on X and allowed the narrative of America and how policing is happening over there creep over to somehow say that this is also happening in the UK when actually there's no evidence that we're anything like that?
I think we have seen too often, and again, it's everything is televised these days, everything is filmed, but we've seen too often police officers who are not up to the physical aspects of the job, who are overawed, who are just pushed around like rag dolls because they're not robust. With the best will in the world, if you're 5'2", you really shouldn't be in this role. You really shouldn't, and it doesn't work like that. And what the Reform was saying is that those people who retired from the military should be given should be encouraged to join the police because they have a far more physical capacity amongst them. And the idea, I think Sarah was saying, if rather than having 2 police women on patrol, having a male and a female at all times, because at times look what happened to those two poor women in Manchester Airport. They were just battered. and that is awful for them. But maybe we shouldn't be putting people in that role. Maybe we shouldn't be opening up that problem. I know we have to have equality, and I know all the rest of it. Of course you do. But if you then put people into roles that actually physically they shouldn't be in, is that not the responsibility of us, of the society, not to be putting people into those dangerous roles for them? And the British police have a very good reputation, even now, for being decent as best they can. And we look at America, and it's a much more robust policing system. But we don't carry guns, by and large. Our police do not, and we like that. And I think we want to keep that if we possibly can. We don't like that aspect of it. The whole point is that the police are citizens. They're citizens first, and policing is by consent. And if we get too much the great strapping chap with all extra bits and pieces attached to them, they look like Inspector Gadget these days. But if they become more and more divorced from the public and more taken away from us, then the consent is going. I think if you look at polling now, consent is rapidly just vanishing. People no longer trust the police. And that's not just because of the physical size, it's also the political way they're being driven by the College of Policing, and the way that these days you're more likely to be in trouble for saying something naughty on the Twitter. I mean, there was the report produced by Policy Exchange yesterday. I think 1 in 170 robberies in London is now cleared up. And yet, if you say something rude on Twitter, you'll have a whole bunch of people reporting you, and you'll be picked up. So, in fact, you're more likely to get arrested and charged and investigated for something you said than for something you did.
Oh, well.
And that's not right.
And that Policy Exchange report is fascinating, and it certainly holds Sadiq Khan to the fire. And we saw Leila Cunningham, Reform UK Council for Westminster City Council, chasing Sadiq Khan down in the street, who I also, on the video footage, was booed by people as he walked past, demanding him to face a debate with Nigel Farage. But Sadiq Khan, I'm assuming, hasn't come back and said he's up for that debate.
Not yet. I mean, there have been times, I'm not frightened of debating Nigel Farage. All right, then. Come on, then. We're here, we're ready. Nigel has made it very clear he's happy to do so, and yet I think it was bluster on the part of the mayor. I don't.
Be careful before you speak next time, maybe.
Well, but it's not just that. And how many times have people thought we can have a go at Nigel, we can have a go at Farage, and he won't kick back? I mean, a certain bank made that mistake when they debanked him, didn't they?
Yes.
A certain Alison Rose lost, what, 9 million in her bonus because of this?
Yes.
Big mistake. And in the time and time again, we have had this situation when people think they can bully Farage, and it doesn't work.
And then final story for me is a shocking story where veterans face eviction from council housing. We see around a dozen ex-Army and Navy veterans in Bolton have been issued eviction notices by the council there, who have said they will be stop paying their housing benefit. Many of them have complex health conditions and things like PTSD, and they've got to vacate it by mid-August. Is this just a shocking indictment of how we treat our veterans?
I am absolutely shocked by this. Look, I don't know, and I'm a little bit cautious, what the reasons they've been given for being evicted. But even so, what are they going to do? Evict them and put them on the streets? Is that what happens next?
They're saying they have no idea yet where they're going.
If the council evicts you, then what do you do? But maybe they'll share an HMO with illegal migrants. I don't know. This is something that it feels, and whilst I do not know the specific details of this case and why they've been given these eviction notices, the mood, again, what does it say? What does it say to people who've served? What does it say to young men and women who want to serve? We worry about recruitment and retention in our armed forces. This is one of the reasons, because the state, the authorities, regard them as so much trash.
Well, to read out, Scott Berry, 55, one of those who served 6 years in the Royal Signals, was quoted saying, "You have migrants who we don't have a clue about being given everything they need. We are veterans and they don't give a damn. We could be made homeless. We still don't know. You never know what they plan to do." And the council and Qualitas is the housing association, I think, they're involved with, are passing the buck. Have a bit of grace. Gawain Towler, from former Director of Communications for Reform UK and candidate for the party board.